Hope you guys are having a great afternoon. Obviously not the best day ever for me, but it's only day one, and there are many more games left to be played. There are approximately 6 rapid games and 18 blitz games. There are still 24 games of chess still to go. All right, you guys. So let's get rolling. So as you guys know, we had one day off yesterday, and today we resumed with the rapid and blitz portion of the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz after the Chess 9LX. Thank you to SCL Chess Club. Thank you for the raid with 378 people. Thank you so much to St. Louis Chess Club. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So yeah, we're gonna be going over the games that I played today. I didn't have a chance really to look at the other games. I'll take a look at the games after I'm offline, of course, but for now we're going to take a look at the game. So I started with the white pieces against none other than Magnus Carlsen. Ironically enough, the process for the seedings for this event was done by the arbiter before the event, and they did a reverse order. So basically everyone else got to pick before Magnus and I got to choose our numbers. And hilariously enough, the last 2 cards, or the numbers that were left, were numbers 1 and 10. So basically I had a 50-50 at the very end between picking number 1 or picking number 10. I picked number 1, which meant I started with the double white pieces, and of course I had to play Magnus in the first game. All right, so let's start with yes, thank you, Rise from Bronze, appreciate it. Thank you so much for the positive reinforcement, man. Like, you know, seriously, one bad day and oh no, it's the end of the world. Lovely. All right, so I play e4. Magnus plays pawn to c6 here. So now I go d4, d5. I played e5. Now, one thing that I would say as well, and this is not really related specifically to the event, but it's more psychological, is that one thing that's really important, and I think this applies to everybody, and why Magnus has been so dominant, is that in general, players, I wouldn't say they're scared of Magnus, but they're afraid to go after Magnus. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people will take away from the match that I played against him in the Lindorus final, or the one that I played in the Tour final as well. Which is that when Magnus tries to play around a little bit, you have to go after him. Like, you can't just be like, okay, he's the best player, I'm not going to take chances. So it is very important to try to go after him. And so yeah, so I decided, you know, I wasn't going to play something slow, I wasn't going to play something dry. I decided to play e5, bishop f5. I played h4 here, h5, bishop d3. We trade e6, bishop g5. Pretty standard stuff here. I did not blame Gary for instilling that fear. I think it's just that most people have seen how well Magnus can play it at various times, and so people kind of get a little bit intimidated by him for sure. And that's also something that I would say that's important in terms of Gary's contextualization. When he made the comment that he said some comment like, I think he said something like, did Gary say that he's like better than Magnus or something because people like put up more resistance against him? He said something like that. I mean, you guys in chat can tell me exactly what Gary said, but he said something somewhat controversial, but it was definitely in this vein. So anyway, Magnus plays queen a5. I go knight d2, queen a6, c4. Yeah, it's crazy during the Magnus Tour. Players would suddenly be winning against Magnus, or would be winning against Magnus, and all of a sudden blunders start playing badly. Yeah, I mean, I think it's nerves, and it's like Magnus has been the best player for a long time. But I think the main thing is once people start understanding that he is beatable, that he is human, it really gives you confidence. Like I can honestly say, like joking aside, 2 years ago or even maybe a year ago, if Magnus had played the Caro Kann in a game, I don't think I actually would have just played this e5 h4 very aggressive approach and gone after him. But again, I think the important thing is that, you know, when you realize that he's not unbeatable and that he is human, you have to go after him. So he certainly is not a Caro Kann player, and he was not expecting to be aggressive and go after him like this. So anyway, queen a6, c4, knight e7, which by the way is a very bad move. Black has to play this bishop b4 move order first, followed by knight e7, because when he plays knight e7, apparently after knight to e2, white is close to winning here. Now I know this engine's not going to get it on the depth, but if you're using one of the supercomputers, you will see that the advantage is very significant. It's well over +1, and objectively it's close to winning for white. This engine's not going to pick it up, but I was talking to my trainer who's using one of those supercomputers, and I do know that after knight e2, white is much better. Yeah, Sessa has it at +2, right? Yeah. So knight e2 is +2. Now, as you see, this is not a supercomputer, so at depth 20 it only says +0.82. But on the supercomputers, knight e2 is close to winning. Now, instead I played knight f3. Magnus goes knight f5. I play castles, knight d7, b3, bishop b4, and now I played rook fd1. Now it's worth noting one thing that's really important here is that you gotta use your mind and your memory to be really good at chess. And in terms of this game, I was actually able to recall that this position transposed into a game that I played against Valentina Gunina, the very talented Russian Russian female player. I think she's won the Russian Women's Championship a few times. She's a grandmaster, like 2550 rated, and so I remember that I had this against her, but I also remember the position is very good for white. So I'm not going to go over that game right now, but the reason that I really remember that game, the music is a little bit loud. Okay, I can turn it down just a touch. I'll turn it down one touch, sorry. Okay, there we go. I turned it down just one touch. Let's see. Okay, so the reason I remember this game, you guys, is because it was a very wild game that I won. But the reason that I remember it is because I got this advantage. I think I played like rook c1 here maybe, or I did something slightly different. I got an advantage, but then I messed it all up and I had a very small advantage. And then I had to grind out this insane two rooks and one pawn against a queen endgame. And I remember this very well because that game against Valentina, I think it went like 8.5 hours. It was a very, very long game. And I remember because I also missed dinner. So because the game went 8.5 hours, I think the game went till like 9:30 or 10 p.m. local time in Gibraltar, and so I missed dinner. The dinner was closed by the time we finished our game. So like both of us actually didn't get to eat dinner, which was a little bit sad. No dinner, 8 hours playing chess, resident sleeper. Yeah, nothing should be 8.5 hours. Yeah. No, it was probably my second longest game after the game against Meyer in Germany, but I do remember because we got into this very long two rooks and one pawn. I mean, maybe I can pop it up very briefly. But no, I'll skip it for now. You guys can look it up. But anyway, I had this 8.5 hour game, and so we both missed dinner. Okay, I'll pop it up very briefly, if it's gonna load. Can we load, please? Maybe. Okay. Can we load, please? Here we go. Okay. Let me find a position. So anyway, you guys, we reached this end game that you see here. This is two rooks. Basically, we reached this end game. On move, what move do we get to it? We got to this end game with two rooks and two pawns against a queen and two pawns on move 60 something. Even earlier than this. How early did we get to this? Look at this. This is crazy. So basically, we reached this endgame on move 60 with two rooks and three pawns against a king, queen, and two pawns, and the game just went on forever. Like, it went on forever. Eventually, I dropped the pawn on g5, and somehow I managed to maneuver everything where I get one pawn, but then it's like then I have to waste another 8 hours maneuvering around again, and again we go, and again and again and again. And it just goes on literally forever. So yeah, this was a crazy, like, this game. Yeah, finally we reached an end game with two rooks and a pawn against a queen, but it went forever. And just to be clear, you guys, this game was probably a draw until like this was a draw until probably like move 95 or something. So it was a crazy long game, but it did come out of this Caro-Kann opening. Again, as you see, same position that I had in the game against Magnus today, and that one I played rook fc1, not rook fd1 though. So just wanted to point that out for you guys. Again, as you see, same position. I played rook fc1. This game I improved with rook fd1. So now Magnus plays knight b6. I played rook ac1. He castles. I went knight f1. He goes c5. Only move I think thematically that makes sense, because the problem for black is that his king side is very soft here. The bishop is anchored on g5. I can bring a knight to e3 or g3. I can remove his knight from f5. Actually, the same position. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty standard. No, c5 didn't throw me off. I felt that there had to be something really good here, and then in the end I played something that I think isn't best, although I haven't actually reviewed the game in depth yet. Which is that in this position I played pawn takes pawn. Objectively, knight e3 I think is supposed to be close to winning on the supercomputers if you use Sessa or Stockfish at really deep depth. It's not catching it right now. I mean, I know knight e3 is supposed to be really strong here, but anyway, this isn't a supercomputer, so yeah, it's what it is. Anyway, I played queen b1. Very creative move. It's not a bad move, but the idea was to go b4 and basically try to use this pawn push to h5 against Magnus. I can't believe you actually remembered that. Yeah. Oh, thank you to Chessbait for the 28-month resub. Holy moly. Thank you so much to Chessbait for the 28 months. It feels like 1,000 years. Yes. Thank you, Chessbait. Appreciate it. Thank you for the 28 months. Wow, geez, that's like, that's crazy. That's like over 2 years. It's 2 years, 4 months. Thank you so much. Anyway, okay, so the point behind b4 is that Magnus has to go bishop e7. And now I played knight g3. Not the best move. I should have just traded and gone g6, knight g3. And I mean, at least I get a knight jumping. There are all kinds of mating threats. The pawn at e5 is really good too. And I think white is better here. I don't know how much better white is better, but white is definitely better. Yeah, the commentator said bishop e7 and knight g3. Again, it's very easy to say in retrospect. But the thing is that after knight g3, what I missed is that he could go rook e8. I just completely forgot he could move this rook. I only saw the other rook. And after rook fe8, if I trade and go knight g5, g6, I have rook f1 to soften the point on f7. I also have g4 as well to soften the pawn on h5. And now it's very hard for black to play. But instead, Magnus goes rook a8, which I completely forgot about. Now I was already in a very, very sour mood because I realized I had misplayed it. But you got to keep going. So I go knight g5, g6, queen to e4, and now Magnus plays knight d5, which is I don't know. Maybe Magnus is still better. I'm gonna let the computer get some depth here. Maybe queen a3 is winning again. Very hard to play as a human, where you just basically grab the gobbers, and after g4 you keep grabbing, and I guess. Wow, and you can just go queen c5 like a complete AI. Yeah, okay, computers are stupid. I mean, this is ridiculous. So no human would ever do that, obviously. So instead, Magnus plays knight d5, pretty standard. And now, for whatever reason, I didn't take the pawn. If I had taken the pawn, this would have been, I would have drawn the game. Because after knight e3, queen c4, I just go knight to e4. And there's this huge gaping hole on f6. The pawn supports the knight. And I can also put a queen on g5. And there's massive pressure here against the black king and the black rooks here on f8 and e7. So I don't know why I did this. For some reason at this point I was like, okay, I can take and it's completely fine. But then I'm like, nah, I'm gonna go king h1 g4 and I'm just gonna checkmate him. But of course, trying to go for checkmate was a very poor decision, because after king h1 c3, as I realized in the game, there's literally nothing going on. Again, I can try g4, but after pawn takes h5, even just king g7 here. And now black's getting the rook to h8, and the king is open on h1, and I mean, it's basically just GG's. So we will remember that insult after the takeover, silly flesh bag. Right. I just think computers find moves that are like just absurd. I mean, it's just absurd. That's all I need to say. So yeah, at this point it's just completely lost. And I mean, I kind of realized this too, so I was just like, yeah, I'll just do something. And so I go here, but after rook c8 now, as you guys can already tell, game is completely lost because the pawn is too far advanced. It's always going to be a real distraction for my rooks. So I can never really line up any checkmate ideas towards f7 and g6 at this point, because of this one juicer on c3. So I play queen f3. Queen a4 is played. I play rook f2. Sound is fine, you guys. You might need to adjust it on your end. c2, I go rook c1 again, trying to create something here towards the pawn, but Magnus correctly goes rook c3. Very classy move here. Really takes away it really takes away all the juice. Now there's no attack on the f file. Black's can capture the pawn on b4, and here I played queen e2, and the reason I did this instead of queen e4 is that basically after queen e4, queen b4, I can play rook c2. We can trade off a whole bunch of goblets on c2, but after rook c7, black is up a pawn. I've got a really bad pawn structure, so all of these endgames are going to be really unpleasant. Maybe a computer can find some way to draw here. There's no music. What? No, there's music. What are you guys talking about? But anyway, everything comes off the board, and I've got really bad pawns. And even if there's maybe some way to draw it, I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna kind of like struggle and suffer. I'll just hope that he makes a bad move instead. So I go queen e2. He takes king h2. Now rook c3. A nice move. I don't know if it was actually the cleanest way to win. It wasn't. Yeah, knight e3 was cleaner, as I suspected during the game. But rook takes g3 is good enough because you hit the pawn on h4. There is music. You guys are trolling. Yeah, so after rook g3, basically black threatens to capture the pawn, and when I take, he just goes queen h3, checks the king, hits the rook, and when I move the king, he just takes the goblet on c1. And again, I could have taken on c2, but here I don't even have a pawn on g3, so it's really bad. So I go queen c4, hoping for some kind of miracle with like some random move like queen d1, check, king g7, rook f7, knight e6, and some kind of miracle repetition and a draw. Queen e4 is better than queen e2, but it didn't matter. It was losing anyway. But correctly, Magnus here, he stops the counterplay, goes rook c7, no entry, knight guards the rook, and after queen b5, trying to go again for queen e8 to check the king and win the pawn on f7, he just goes queen takes g5, and here I resigned. Obviously, I can recapture the queen, but then black makes a new queen, and black simply has an extra knight here on d5. So very, very tough game. I mean, I wasn't super upset because I knew I had something, and then I just in the critical moment I didn't find the right moves. So I wasn't that upset. Obviously, I wasn't thrilled that I lost the game, but I felt that I got a good position, and then I just didn't find the right continuations. And as I've said before, when that happens, it's a lot easier, I think, to deal with in some ways. It's just like you know you had something, you know you played a good game, you just have to be better in the critical moments. So that's what happened. So I start off with a loss against Magnus. And now I'll move to the second game against Wesley So, where I had the white pieces. So here I play e4, Wesley goes to e5, I play knight to f3, and Wesley plays knight f6. Now, I'm going to give you guys a fun little fact. So before this game, I had actually looked at playing a g3 on move 2, so which is kind of random, very weird little move, but I consider playing g3. So when I played knight f3, knight f6, I didn't really want to go into the Petrov, so I thought, you know what, I don't really want to go into the Petrov, so let's just transpose back into some g3 fianchetto, put the bishop on g2 with the hat around it and castle the king, and try to play simple chess. So here, Wesley goes knight c6, of course, to guard the juicer. I go g3, d5, we trade, bishop g2. Wesley goes bishop c5, we castle. I go rook e1, rook e8, and now I played knight c3. And at this point, we transpose into the Wien game, or the Wien game, right? Or Wien, however you pronounce it in German. But we transpose into the Vienna opening after knight c3, bc3. So for anyone who's wondering what the Vienna opening is, normally the order that occurs in is e4, e5, knight to c3, knight f6, g3, d5, you trade, go bishop g2, takes, knight c6, knight f3, bishop c5, castles, rook e1, rook e8, d3, bishop b6. So this is the normal order to get to the Vienna opening. In the game, however, we take a very different path, but we end up there anyway, as you guys will see, because after takes, bishop b6, this is of course the exact same position, but from a different move order. So we end up transposing back into the Vienna opening from a different order. I go bishop e3. Wesley, being typical Wesley, finds a very annoying bishop a5, pinning the pawn and the rook. I go back and he plays bishop b6 and says, "You shall not pass," because he assumes if I can't bring the bishop back to e3, then the bishop has a really nice diagonal from a7 to g1. So here I played rook to b1. Wesley goes bishop f5. I play bishop to e3 now, basically saying, you know what, Wesley, I don't want you to go bishop a5, and if you do, I'm just going to eat your goblet on b7. So he goes queen d7. I go knight to d2. Again, I don't want to let him play e4. I want to open up the diagonal, control the square, maybe jump with the horse to c4, and put pressure on the bishop on b6 as well. So now Wesley plays rook a d8. I play rook b5, which I don't think is the best move. I think what I should have played here was just very simply knight to c4. And positions, I mean, objectively balanced. Maybe black is a little bit better due to the big center, but white does have some open lines for the bishops on the diagonals as well. So instead I go rook b5. Wesley goes bishop h3. I play bishop h1, f6, and now I play pawn to a4. Another move that's very aimless and stupid. But at this point, I wouldn't say I was on tilt, but I was kind of just in a bad mood, because one thing I would say in general is that I almost always believe that I'm better if I have a bishop on the diagonal like this. And so during the game, I realized that objectively it's equal, or maybe slightly better for black, but I know it's not exciting. And so I kind of felt that, you know what, I'm just going to go full on Nepo and kind of just move quickly and hope that somehow I can either pressure Wesley on the clock or he'll make some kind of blunder. So this was kind of me being like Nepo and just making normal moves kind of quickly. So I play a4. Bishop e6, good move by Wesley, brings the bishop back, cuts off these knight moves. So I go here, Wesley very happily goes bishop a3 and says, "Do you want to draw, sir?" So instead I play queen a1, he takes, of course important move because now I don't get a5, attacking the bishop and putting pressure on the pawn on b7. So he takes, goes b6, I play rook f1, and now here Wesley played knight to e7 and offered a draw. So I don't know if people caught the webcam. So here Wesley played 97 and offered a draw, and probably for a good 30 seconds I was laughing for people who actually saw the cams. And the main reason was because position's pretty dry, nothing's happening. But in general, like Wesley and I, we don't have a pact or anything, but we have a way of magically finding draws when the situation is balanced or neither side has anything like really special going on. So show it. I don't know if there is a clip, but basically, yeah, like Wesley and I, when we're like, it feels like somehow we have this like weird pact to make draws. Like there's nothing official, but somehow we always end up making a draw. Like the position always peters out, or somebody offers a draw and like move 25 randomly every single time. It's not collusion, you guys. Stop being silly. But it just seems to happen somehow. whenever we're playing, if someone's not much better or it's just like very dry, we're just like okay, let's have some peace. Let's have some peace. No need to be insane. No, actually, chat, to be clear on what collusion is. Collusion is when you make an agreement prior to the game. That's what collusion is, to be very clear. That is not allowed. How much should I say on this topic? I guess I won't say much. I know Magnus has made some comments about these things in regards to, like, Sergei Karyakin and like Shakhtar Mamedyarov or something. He made some comment that caused a lot of controversy a while ago. But yeah, so somehow we always just end up drawing. It's just like it just happens. No, an agreement during the game, if someone offers a draw, you're allowed to agree to make a draw. but anyway, yeah, my point is that somehow it just we you know, if nobody has anything special going on, we're very peaceful people, and yeah, it happens. So yeah, here Wesley offered a draw, and I'll give you guys my exact thought process. Well, before I do that, one thing, and this is related. So at some point in the future, I probably am going to do a collaboration with Fedor Holtz, of course, the very famous poker player. I think he won a couple of bracelets in the Online World Series. And the reason that I bring that up is very specifically that when Wesley offered the draw here, my approach was a very poker approach. So the way I thought about this first, I thought, okay, I'm probably slightly worse here. I know I'm probably okay. I shouldn't lose, but I'm probably slightly worse. So that was my first thought is that if I'm slightly worse, what should I do? Should I press on or not? So if I feel that I'm slightly worse, what are the odds that I'm going to lose the game if I keep playing? And I thought that here, at this point, realistically, the odds were probably greater than 20% that I would lose if I played on. I thought probably it's still a draw, like 60-70%, but objectively, I thought there's probably like 20% chance that I lose this because I'm moving too quickly. I've got a slightly worse position. And so I thought, okay, well, if I assess it at 20% or greater than 20% here, should I play on or should I take the draw? So that was the first thing that I was thinking. Then I thought, well, secondarily, this isn't just a rapid event. There are also 18 blitz games after the 9 rapid games. So then when I start thinking about that as secondarily, it's like, well, okay, if there also are 18 more games of blitz, you know, if I lose this game and I start off 0 out of 2. That really puts me in a bad spot. Whereas if I take the draw and I move on, there still is time to recoup it. And at greater than 20%, I think it's minus EV to play on rather than take a draw. So yeah, that's kind of how I viewed it. I felt that objectively, if it's greater than 20% that I'm going to lose, or I think that it's greater than 20% that I'll lose here, then like what should I do in this situation? Like should I play on or should I take the draw? Now, if it was rapid and there are only 9 games, if there are only rapid games, I think there's no doubt that I play on. It's 100% plus EV because if I lose the game and I'm 0 out of 2, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm toast. But I only have 7 rounds, so I only have 7 rounds left to play. If it's only rapid, and then it's like if there are only 7 rounds, my odds of winning are way down. So that's what I would say is what the main thing that shifted the reason I didn't play on was because there are 18 blitz games. That there's so many blitz games to come that it's not correct percentage wise. If I thought that maybe my odds of losing here were like 10% or 5%, I'd probably still play on. But I thought the odds were 20. I would say 20 to 25% that I lose, probably 80% draw, 10 to 15% that I win. Why did Wesley want to draw? Probably because Wesley won his first game with white. He equalized with black, feeling very solid, very stable. And he probably felt that it's about equal or maybe slightly better. And why does he want to expend a lot of energy in a situation where he doesn't feel that he has great winning chances? So that's probably the reason that Wesley offered a draw. But I'm just giving you guys my whole rationale for why I took the draw. So I thought for a long time, it's like, okay, you know, if I think it's greater than 20%, they're 18 blitz games, all things considered, it's not the right decision to play on. So I took the draw. So I took the draw. Oh, did I give you guys 115%? Sorry. Yeah. No, what I meant was like 20 to 25% that Wesley wins. Probably like, I don't know, 60% that it's a draw, something like that. 15 to 20, give or take, you know, that I win. So that's what I would say. That's what I would say in terms of my overall video is slower than audio. You stop talking, your lips are still moving. Yes. No, that doesn't look right, you guys. I just looked at OBS. You guys are trolling. But anyway, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anyway. But yeah, ratios are ratios. So that's why I took the draws, because I felt that I didn't feel plus EV, because I thought if I lose this game and I give Wesley, who also is very good at blitz, 2 extra juicers, 2 extra points, why is that advantageous? So that's why here, when Wesley offered the draw, I took the draw. So let's move on to the third game between Lenier and myself. So let's keep going. So okay, third game between Lenier and myself. So here I had the black pieces. So e4, I play e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6. We play the Ich bin ein Berliner. Castles, knight e4, Lenier goes d4, knight d6. We trade d e5. I go knight f5 here. Queen d8, king d8, knight c3, king e8. And this, you guys, is known as the Berliner endgame. Very famously featured. Yes, I am a big fat jelly donut. Ich bin ein Berliner. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway. Right. So anyway, we reached this end game. This was featured very famously in the World Championship match in 2001 between Vladimir Kramnik and Garry Kimovich Kasparov. In the match that Kramnik beat Kasparov to take the World Championship title from him. So this is featured very prominently. I've talked a lot about it. Now, that was in 2001, the match that was played. And we're here in 2020, and this is still very topical, and it's still considered completely solid and playable. And that speaks volumes just about how much work and how innovative Kramnik was in terms of coming up with a setup and proving that it is fundamentally sound as an opening choice. Secondarily, I've told this before, so I'll say it one more time as well, which is that in terms of Garry, I worked with Garry Kasparov in 2011, and the way that you know Garry was so insane about this is that in ChessBase, when I looked at his files, when I was working with him in 2011, there were over 200 files that Garry had compiled during the match in ChessBase on this Berlin endgame. Now, it's an endgame. Obviously, you can do a lot of work, a lot of research, but when you have 200 plus files on it, it shows that you kind of lost your mind and you let Kramnik get in there, and he was living rent-free with this endgame. And of course, Kasparov also did not break the Berlin Wall. He failed to win, and finally, towards the end of the match, he actually switched from e4 to playing d4 on move 1. So yeah, so just to get, I know I've told you guys that before, but just once again, I did see that, and to me that shows just how, yeah, Garry was try-harding. Yeah, totally. So h3 was played. I go h5, knight e2. This line's been played quite a lot over the last couple of years. It's kind of gone in and out of fashion. Knight c3, rook d1. I take and go c6. I think in St. Louis in 2019, Vishwanathan and Anand played rook d3 or rook d2 in one of these positions against me. But Lenier chose to play f4, which is the old line. Now, the point is, white has 2 ugly double pawns here. Black also has 2 ugly pawns, although the pawn on c6 is critical because it covers the d5 and b5 square from which the horse can jump in and attack the black king and the black rook. But the thing is that after f4, bishop e7, knight e4, this is a very long line. It's been played in many games. I remember there was a game played in London. I believe it was between Anand and I believe Anish Giri, actually, of all people. And this was like London, maybe 2015 or 2016. I believe Anish played rook d8. They traded bishop d8, rook d1. Or sorry, no, I think Anish took with the king, rook d1, and went king c7 or something like this. I don't remember exactly how the line went, but I know Anish played this line with king d8 against somebody in London, you know, 10 million years ago, and so forth. The London Chess Classic, yeah. So So yeah, so anyway, I knew this was a line. One thing that makes chess really hard, you guys, by the way, is that a lot of these Berlin lines, you look at the game, we're already at move 19, and this is still preparation. So in my game, Lenier had clearly prepared this to at least move 25 of the game. Oh, it was Sasha Anish. Yes, it was Grishuk versus Giri. Sorry, it wasn't Vichy. Yeah, it was Grishuk Giri. That is true. But anyway, so it's very hard. So Lenier took. Now, I'm going to tell you, Rook Fe1 is probably the main line. Now, one thing that's great about chess and terrible for people like Lenier who hopes probably to play this line again is that I'm going to give you guys the refutation in all of 5 minutes to this setup that Lenier played here today. And this is what makes chess very hard, by the way, is that within 5 minutes, using the computer, you can already prove that the whole setup, that black can equalize very easily. So the main line that white should play here is actually Rook F to E1, and Rook F to E1 is a little bit better than probably Rook D8. Now the thing is, on Rook F to E1, what you're supposed to play is Bishop G5, F G5, Knight to D4, and the point is you hit the pawn and you have Knight F3, forking the king and the rook. And white is supposed to play, I believe white is supposed to play Knight D6, King E7, King to G2. But here, the reason this is a draw is because you go Knight takes C2. And now if white plays Knight F5, King E6, Knight G7, you just go back to E7, and white has to make a draw with Knight F5, King E6. Do I dislike Gary? No, Gary's amazing. But white can also, wait, here white can also play, I believe, there's a line, I believe, with King to G2 right away. Or no, there's another line here that white has. Let me try to remember it. It's not C3. Is it Rook D3? Anyway, this is completely equal here. But the point is that in this line, when white goes Rook Fe1, you do trade and undouble the pawns. So you undouble the pawns in this position, and then the game goes on. But because Lenier takes here, I take and he plays Rook D1. I actually confused the lines here. I thought the correct move was to capture the bishop, when in fact the correct move here is to move the bishop to E7, I believe. Now the computer I see is saying the line that I played in the game is zeros. It's at depth 20. I'll let it get more depth, but I don't think it was the right move, or if it is, it's very hard to play. So here what I was supposed to play is bishop to E7, and now there are 4 continuations that white has here. One continuation that white can play here is king to H2. Actually, not king H2, sorry. One continuation white can play here is king to G2. After rook to G8, if white trades, you just take. And on knight D6, you can play a couple of things. You can just, I think the main thing you do here is just king E6, knight F5, king F5, king F3, F6. And position is very dry. We reach a rook and pawn endgame with even material. And it should be a draw with correct play. So this is the first line that is completely drawn, which is king to G2. Another line that white can play, I believe, here is bishop takes E7, king takes E7, and now something like knight to G3. But after knight to G3, you can just play a very simple move like knight to D4, or also move like knight to H4, and the position dries out very quickly as well. And I think the other line is white can also play rook D1, king G7, C3. So white can also go C3 to stop the knight hopping to D4, but now black can go rook to D8, king D8, knight G3. And if black were to trade the knights, white is actually winning because you get 4 connected and you can create some passed pawns. But black can actually play pawn to G6 here. And if white trades the knights after pawn takes king G2, hoping to bring the king up, black can play H4. And the pawns actually cover all the critical squares here. And the endgame is a complete draw. As you see, 0.00, the position is too clogged and white has nothing going on. So this is more or less what I should have done in the game. Unfortunately, because I haven't looked at the line in a while after rook d1, I just confused the lines, and so I took and played king e7. Now I did know during the game that after knight d6, knight d4, this is still objectively drawish, but I knew there were tricks. And oh right, there's one other line that I wanted to mention. It just popped back into my head, which is that after rook f e1, right, takes knight d4, there's also this line with c3, knight f3, king g2, takes king e6, f4. And I think you're supposed to wait, maybe I have the order wrong. There was a line where basically you reach a position like this, something like this, and it's supposed to be a draw. It's supposed to be a draw, but it can get tricky. So yeah, just wanted to mention that as well, but it doesn't matter for now. So let's get back to the game. So I take knight d4, c3, good move by by Lenier. I go knight f3, king g2. Now it's important here that I take on g5, because if I take on e5 after check, I can't go to f8, because if I go here I get checkmated by rook d8, for example. And the knight holds the glue. It holds the square on e7, so the king is stuck on f8. And after king e6, knight g7, king e7, white can just go f4, and after knight g6, just king f3. And maybe king f3 isn't even the best move, but white, it's even material, but white has 3v2 here, and the knight and the king and the open line, combined with the fact that my even pawn is this ugly double pawn that's going nowhere on the entire board, means that that white's completely winning. These lines have been analyzed to death, it seems. Yes, well, that's why the Berlin is so stable, and that's why chess is so hard. Now, if you were to take away computers and humans had to look at these lines, it would take much longer to figure out why someone is okay or not okay in you know, X variation. But again, with our lovely silicon friends, we know within a couple of minutes or even seconds how to refute a variation. So what Lenier played today will never be playable again for a win. Because all the lines that I'm showing here are the absolute best moves for black, and the computers have shown it to us. So yeah, so anyway, right, so let's keep going. So I take on g5, he goes f4, not knight f5, by the way, because now I can come up, and if takes, I just eat the pawn on e5, no f4, knight's getting trapped on g7 as well, because my rook creates the classic right triangle, so everything is holding here. So didn't realize I was in Charlie's stream. thank you for that, man. Appreciate that. All right, so anyway, and if white plays f4 here, I can go knight e6, and the difference is now if white plays knight f5, I can go king to e8, and the knight holds the glue, and the king holds the d8 square as well. So anyway, yeah, so Lenier does play f4, I go knight e6, and now Lenier played f5 here. I checked, he went here, and I played knight e5. Now, one thing that's weird is that at this point in the game, I don't think you guys saw, because you probably they weren't showing us on the cam, but when Lenier played f5, and I was thinking for like 4 minutes here, Lenier literally was like, he was literally like this. He was just staring right in the cam for 4 minutes looking at my face. He was literally like, he literally was staring at my face on the webcam for like 4 minutes as I was thinking, which was very, very strange, to put it mildly. But I did notice it, so it was kind of odd. But anyway, I checked, he went here, and now here Lenier took forever. Now I think knight f4 is fine. I don't know if it was at this point that Lenier went out of his prep, or maybe it was after f5 he had a different move in his file. Because it was when I played knight f4 he started thinking, and then he played and then he thought for a very, very long time here. I think here he used maybe 13 minutes. He had maybe 15 minutes on the clock, and he got all the way down to 2 minutes here before he played the move pawn to c4. So what I suspect is that after knight d5, maybe he was unaware. He kind of, his preparation ended around move 27. So yes, oh, it was 8 minutes. Okay, there was another position then. Maybe it was here on c4 that he used the rest of his time. But yeah, so he played c4, and now here I played a move that's bad because I'm not a computer, unfortunately. I played knight to e3. Apparently knight to b4, and I guess black is fine. Yeah, because after king f4 I can go f6, and if e6 I go rook d8. I'm such trash at this game. Yeah, and I guess after a3 I can just take knight c2, rook g1, rook g8. White never has f6 to win the rook because it's always a capture with check on f6. Yeah, okay, this is disappointing then. Although, to be fair, after takes, f6, king f8, takes, knight c8, it still remains quite unclear, and so forth. Okay, wait, so I guess my trainer is watching the broadcast, because you just heard that, you heard that Google, right? So the Google Hangout noise you just heard is my trainer with his supercomputer saying knight g5 to h7 was the line. So knight g5 to h7 is the line that wins? Knight g5 to h7? Oh no, knight g5 to h7 is the line for black. Sorry. No, I'm supposed to go knight g5 and knight h7 apparently, and this is holding for black. Okay, but again, I'm not a computer, so like I'm not going to go knight g5, knight h7. So that's why actually I can tell you exactly why Lenier was staring at the the camera for 4 minutes looking at my face, because The reason Lenier was staring is because what he knew here, since he was still in his preparation, is he knew that knight g5 was the best move, and he hadn't looked at knight f4. So when he was looking at the camera for 4 minutes, he was trying to figure out whether I knew the line and was trying to remember it, or whether I was completely on my own. So that's why he was staring at his webcam for 4 minutes. But yeah, still prep. Yeah, this is modern day chess, you guys. Very oftentimes you can do preparation 30 moves plus into the game. But yeah, apparently I'm supposed to go knight g5, knight h7. Big boo hoo hoo. Apparently after knight f4 it's completely lost if you have a supercomputer. So king g3. Yeah, I didn't go knight g5. Well, knight g5 was like going, yeah, I was going like top lane, but I want to go mid lane with my knight. I want my knight in the middle here. I got to go mid. If I don't go mid with my knight, then what am I doing? How do you prep that much WTF? Because there are certain lines that are very forcing. So you can prepare to move 30. It happens. Fabiano has had it happen many times in his games. So everybody preps really deep. It happens. So c4, I go knight e3, rook g1. Very good move by Lenier, by the way, here. I actually thought he would go rook c1, but after I go f6 here, the position is going to become a draw because white can't over support the knight and the pawn on e5 anymore, and f5 is also weak here. So he goes rook g1, I go knight c2. Again, the idea behind rook g1, he wants to touch the knight, or attack it, sorry, from f3 or f4 or f2, and then it's a fossilization because I'm going to lose the knight or I'm going to lose the pawn on g7. So I go knight to c2. He goes king f4. I go king f8 here. Now here I probably should have still played rook g8 and taken a very worse endgame. But after f6, king f8, knight c8, it looks really dicey. I'm going to lose some juicers here on the king-queen side. And also my king side is in tatters as well. So maybe computer can salvage it somehow, but it looks really, really bad. So yeah, anyway, so I go king f8, he goes king e4. Another great move, brings the king to the center. It's centralized. It holds the pawns. White can push now either way. And the knight on c2 is not really doing very well. So here I go rook to g8. He goes rook g2. Play knight to d4. And now this is where Lenier had gotten too long time. So at this point, I had maybe 14 minutes, maybe a little bit less now, maybe like 13 minutes, but Lenier was down to like 1 minute or less at this point. So he plays rook g2. I go knight d4, b4, and now I found g6. I was very happy because actually after g6, I thought that I was out of danger. So Lenier goes f6. He does not take the pawn on c5 because then I take the pawn, and this is a true fossilization. I hit the king, can't go back, so knight covers a square, and I'm also hitting the king, so I win the rook on g2. Yeah, he had like 10 seconds. Like he mismanaged his time completely this game. So f6, I play knight e6 again. Great hold now. The knight covers a square. It also can capture here because one of the big dangers is if white can if I play a random move like h4 and white gets an open lane, it's just checkmate and GG. Any open lane for the rook and I just lose. Do I feel bad for today? Not really. I'm not happy with my play, but I don't feel bad. So I go knight e6 because now I can take. If he takes, I just take. I keep the lanes closed. No entries for the rook. He goes a3. I go g5. He goes knight f5. I go g4, h4. And now I proceed to throw the game away here, right? I go g3. Or is it already throwing it away? Am I already throwing here? Let's see. Am I already throwing? So I go g4, h4. And here apparently I'm supposed to go king e8. I don't know. Anyway, I played g3 because I thought it was just an easy draw. I thought I trade, I take, go a5, easy draw. We trade the pawns. He wins a juicer, but my pawn's running down the board. Easy draw. And then, much to my horror, as soon as I played a5, I realized that Lenier could just go pawn to c5 here. Very classic thematic break, because whichever pawn I capture, I lose the other one. So if I take this way, he gets the outside lane. The pawn is going towards a8, and I lose. And if I take this one, which I do, he takes this one. His pawn is 2 squares from queening. So I was very upset because honestly, when I played calculated pawn to g3, I thought, whatever. I just trade. It's all good. I take. I go a5. Easy draw, danger's gone. And then as soon as I played a5, I'm like, oh shit, he can play pawn to c5. And sure enough, within a couple of seconds, Lenier went c5, and I was really, really angry. I was ready to throw my computer out the window at this point. I was that upset. So now I took the pawn on b4, only try he takes. I go king e8. The only way to try and hold this is get my king over and flank, and If I can trade these two, maybe I can bring the king back and get over and make a draw. So here Lenier went king d3, first mistake. I don't know why he didn't just eat the pawn on h5. If he had done this, I think it's, I mean, maybe it's still hard to win objectively. Maybe it takes here, knight d3. This is probably winning for white, although it's actually going to be, there are some technical challenges here for white to win this game. But this probably is winning. Instead he goes king d3, I go check, he goes king c2. Second mistake, I think. I thought king c4, or no, not a mistake. Oh no, king c2 is actually right. Fair enough. So he goes king c2, I go here, he takes, I check. And now here Lenier inexplicably blunders. He goes king c3, which is completely inexplicable. What he should have gone was just king b1. Avoid these two squares, because then I can check and always take the pawn, because I hit the king and create the triangle, or whatever, what you call it. So basically he should have gone king b1. If he goes to b1, he wins, but by going to these two squares, he allows me to fork his king and win and do the swap 50-50, and it's still winning, by the way, but it's still hard to play. Although here after king e6, I also blundered knight f4. I thought, okay, I just take and it's a draw, and I forgot he goes knight d3, and after knight d3 b7, I can just resign the game. I can't stop the juicer from becoming a grill, and my king is in check, and I just lose. He gets a queen. It's time to leave. So instead I go king f5, and now here Lenier makes the blunder. He lets me off the hook by playing knight to d3. Terrible move, throws the whole thing away. Fortunately, Lenier only had seconds left on the clock. What he should have played here was pawn to h5, and the reason that this wins is because when I take the pawn, he can actually not tunnel on h6. He can play knight to d3 again, takes b7, create the grill, and I can resign again. So yeah, he goes knight d3, and when he played knight, it's like, whew, mamma mia, praise the Lord. We're out of danger. I'm going to be able to make a draw here. So so here I play knight a4 check again, do the swap, the 50-50, and now this is actually a draw because he has 3 pawns, but I can bring the knight back around, and I'm going to be able to get rid of all the pawns. So now he plays king c3, I go c5. Important move, by the way, stop him from bringing the king for the extra support of the pawn chain, and now I can also lever with c4. I can also come back this way. And without an active king over somewhere on the king side here, it's an easy draw. So he goes h5, I push, he goes knight f4. Again, he can go h6 here, but now I go king g6, and it's still a draw because there's no extra pawn. He needs the extra pawn somewhere over here to flank the knight and distract it, but he no longer has it, so I can capture, and then I'll be able to just sack my knight for the 2 juicers and make a draw. He can go knight c5 here, but if he takes the pawn, I just take the pawn, I take this one, come back, it's an easy draw. So his knight is tied to the pawn, because if he loses the base pawn, he loses the whole pawn chain, because he'll lose both of them. Like Gary said, very lucky. Yeah, well, no, today I didn't get very lucky, because objectively the results balance out. So here Lenier goes h5, I play c4 again, use the knight, hit the knight, threaten to capture all the juicers, goes knight f4, I take h6, king f6, and now it's a draw because I can bring the king back when he pushes. So Lenier goes king d4, and here I just play c3, just make the draw, get out of dodge, and don't worry about anything else. So he takes knight d5, takes king g6. All I need to do is take this last pawn, and then when it's only a king and a knight, you can't checkmate with a king and a knight. So I take f6, knight f6, and game ends in a draw, as white has a king and a knight, I have a king, neither side can checkmate each other. So that is the end of the game, ends in a draw. So I finished the day with 2 draws, 1 loss, 1 point out of 3. Not fantastic, but it is what it is. And we move forward. Does Twitch help or hurt you with tournament prep? I felt pretty good. It's more about playing into the rhythm. 96 was the most beautiful tactics he's ever seen. There were many tactics that were working, but what I would say in general is that the way I feel is that this game I 100% deserve to lose, but I would also say I 100% did not deserve to lose the game to Magnus. So I think they even out. I think they really even out in terms of the overall score. Oh, and sorry you guys, yeah, it's 2 out of 6 because the standings are different. So let me load this for a second. These are the standings, you guys. The way it works in rapid chess is that for a win you get 2 points, for a draw you get 1, for a loss you get 0. Normally it'd be 1 for a win, half for a draw, 0 for a loss. So actually my score is different. I have 2 out of 6 because the draws count for 1 point instead of half. So yeah, so those are the standings after day 1. I'm kind of on the bottom tier. I guess I have 2 points. Magnus only has 3, which is a little bit surprising. as you know, Magnus had this very unfortunate disconnection in his game against Jan Nepomniachtchi, where he lost. And what I would say about that, by the way, is that this is not me being sarcastic, but I did notice that Magnus had yellow and red bars on Zoom. So his connection was actually not good today. Because in the Zoom call, we're all in the Zoom call, I saw the bars. His bars were like, they were flickering between yellow and red during that second game. So I mean, I don't know, maybe he can upgrade the internet. I don't know what the situation is or where he is in Oslo. But yeah, the connection was not stable for Magnus. So he lost the game to Jan, where he got disconnected, which was pretty unfortunate for Magnus. So yeah, so those are standings. Right now I've got 2 points, same as Lenier, Magnus on 3, Wesley and Jan on 4, Levon and Hari Krishna on 5. So a lot of stuff going on. It's going to be fun. As I said before, there's still 6 more rapid games, but there are also 18, I repeat, 18 blitz games as well. So again, my goal is just be in the hunt, be in the hunt for Red October, and somewhere in the middle, if I get to the blitz and I have a chance, I'll have a shot to catch up and take the lead. But yeah, there are 18 blitz games. So on Friday there are 9 blitz games, Saturday there are 9 blitz games. So that's also why when I talked about the game against Wesley, taking a draw was not the craziest thing in the world, because there are a ton of games left to go.